Hi Stampers, this is Debbie Henderson from Debbie's Designs. Welcome to a new video. I'm going to be showing you a couple things today. I'm going to be showing you how to use a framelit die to partially cut this cardstock so that the butterfly sticks out. When you open the card, this is what it looks like, and you can see where the butterfly was cut out partially, and then it becomes a layer for your stamped butterfly. I'm also going to show you how to color on designer paper. And the designer paper that I used for today is called Timeless Elegance. And it comes in a pack of 12 beautiful patterns. This is the first side. And when I flip it over, this is the second side. And what I'm showing you today, there's two of these sheets that actually have flowers on them. And they're pretty much very vanilla base with smoky slate or basic black and maybe even basic gray in the background. And I'm actually taking these images and coloring them with our Stampin' Right markers. So I'll show you how to do that today. The stamp set that I'm using is a Watercolor Wings. And as you can see, my butterflies have 3 layers of color. Or actually, I use the colored cardstock with 2 layers of color, but you could add 3 layers of color. And I keep a magnetic sheet on the inside to hold my framelits that coordinate with this stamp set. And we're actually going to be using this one today. And these are the butterfly framelits dies that coordinate with the butterfly basic stamp set, but we won't be using this stamp set today, just the framelit. For cardstock, we're going to be using basic gray, 5.5 by 8.5 inches, scored in the center at 4 1/4. Very vanilla, 5 1/4 by 2 3/4, and I've got a plus or minus there because depending on where you're going to line up your butterfly, the vanilla goes on the inside, and you might end up having to shorten it a little bit when we cut the card, and you'll see what I mean. The Timeless Elegance designer paper, 5 1/4 by 2 3/4 inches, and again with the plus or minus, you may have to adjust that a little bit. And you're going to need a scrap piece of smoky slate for your stamping. For Stampin' Right markers, I've got crushed curry, Saffron, mint macaron, smoky slate, and soft sky. You will also be using the white perfect accents, which I keep in a clear case. Oops, and they're not in there right now. Here they are, and they come in 3 sizes, your small, medium, and large. And we're actually going to be coloring these today, and I have a light blue and a yellow permanent marker. And as you'll notice on the card, they turn out a little bit on the aqua greenish side, and I'll show you how to do that. Lastly, we're going to be using Versamark ink, basic gray ink, and gold embossing powder. So let's bring in our Big Shot machine, and I'll show you how to cut your basic gray cardstock piece, which is what we're going to be using first. So the first thing we're going to do is put our basic gray piece on our cutting plate. And you're going to line up your butterfly by centering it on the fold line. And I'm using these little pointy pieces right here as my center point. And let me move it over just a little bit. Now, we don't want this portion cut out. We just want the top portion. So what we're going to do is take our second cutting plate and put it right on the score line. And then we're going to run it through the Big Shot. So when you remove it, you'll see that the butterfly is only cut up to the halfway point. And yes, there is the cutout there, but we're going to cover that with the Very Vanilla layer. So let me move the Big Shot out of the way. And now what I'm going to do is bring in my paper cutter. And if you want this card to fit in a regular sized envelope for the 5.5 by 4.25 inch card, we need to measure from the tip of the wings. So I'm going to find the 4.25 inch mark, put the wings on 4.25, and then cut off the bottom. So that's what I meant when I said that you may need to adjust your designer paper and your Whisper White or your Very Vanilla. And this is actually perfect, so we don't need to make any adjustments. Now I've started coloring this piece here, but I've left a few there so I can show you how I did that. So for the leaves, I'm going to be using the Mint Macaron. And again, I'm just coloring in the leaf image. And the markers do dry a little bit lighter than what you're going to see here. So let me finish the green part, or the macaron, Mint Macaron. And what I've done to add detail, I just go in and add a second layer of color where my veins to my leaves would show up. So if you keep adding to your green, it'll darken in some areas where you want some of the shading. So that takes care of the leaves. Now I'm going to do the soft sky flower. I'm just going to color the whole flower. And again, where I want to add shading, I'm just going to go in and feather that out. So even though these aren't alcohol markers, you can achieve the same effect by just adding more color to darken in some areas. And now for the yellow flower, I'm going to start with the So Saffron. And then with this one, I wanted it to be a little bit darker than just adding the same color over and over. So I'm going to add, and I think I told you Daffodil Delight, and it's actually crushed curry. So these are the petals that are actually folded over, so I'm adding the fold. And now I'm going to go in and finish up by adding a little bit more So Saffron. And that's all there is to coloring designer paper. Very easy. Just keep layering your markers and you'll find that you'll have a very nice effect. So let's glue this layer to the card front. And we're going to stamp the sentiment using the basic gray ink. And I'm just going to stick that in a blank spot right here. And now let's move on. Oh, before we do that, let's glue the Very Vanilla layer to the inside. And this will actually cover the whole. And I purposely added glue to the whole thing because I want to show you a tool that I use often. Now I shouldn't have added adhesive right here because that's going to stick to your envelope. The adhesive remover will take care of that for you. If you ever make a boo-boo like this, don't throw your card away and start over. This will actually take off the excess glue that you have on your card. And the reason I knew to show this to you is because I did the same thing, not on purpose, on my first card. So as you see, the glue is all gone. And when it piles up at the end, you just pull on it. And this, I've had this for a long time. It's one of those products that will last you forever and ever. Okay, now let's stamp the butterflies. And I did forget to mention the Smoky Slate ink pad also, because that's what I used for one of the colors on the butterfly. So we're going to use this outline. It's just going to outline the butterfly for the first layer. And as I said, I'm using the Smoky Slate Cardstock, so that's my first color. If you were to use white, you could actually stamp 3 colors on this butterfly. So there's your first layer. And because we're using embossing powder, I am going to rub this with my embossing buddy. And bring in my Versamark pad. And the next stamp image is this one, which has a little bit more detail. We're going to do this one with the Versamark ink. And this lines up directly over the first image that we stamped. And we'll bring in the gold embossing powder and sprinkle that on. And I'm going to go heat this with my heat tool and cut it with my Big Shot, and I'll be right back. Okay, here are my 2 butterflies. I had done the little one ahead of time, but notice how nice the gold adds such a great effect to this butterfly. I didn't do the body, I didn't stamp the body because we're actually going to add some of the white accents that we're going to color with the permanent markers, and I'll show you how to do that next. So we're going to bring in our white accents, and I actually need 4 of the smaller size. So I'm going to color 4 of these with the blue first. And you can see how nicely those color. And then the reason I added yellow, I was trying to match some of the coloring in the markers. And I thought the blue was just too blue. So I just flicked a little bit of yellow on the top and it turns it to like a greenish, bluish color. And now we're going to take the paper piercer and just line them up on the body. And you really don't have to wait long for these to dry because of course they're permanent ink. And we'll add 1 to our smaller butterfly. And now let's glue this to our card. We're going to use Stampin' Dimensionals. I'm just going to use 1 in the center of this butterfly. And I'm going to use about 5 on this one. And what I did when I glued this down, I left some of the gray sticking out as a layer. So about there. So this one is glued flat, but this one here, I'm going to bend it so that the wings are, looks like he's in flight. So there you have it. As you can see, the designer paper is a little different. The pattern is different on each of these, but the coloring really adds a lot to it. If you have any questions, make sure you leave me a message or contact me by email, and I'll list all the supplies I used today and the link to my online store. Have a good day, and thanks for stopping by.